She wore her best dress. Soft blue cotton, neatly ironed with white lace at the collar. A delicate hat rested on her head, tilted just right, just like the women in the magazine she used to admire. Her hands clutched a worn trunk, old but strong, filled with her whole life. Clothes, letters, books, hope. She had traveled hundreds of miles, sitting through dusty roads and crowded carriages. But when he finally stepped off the platform and looked at her, everything froze. He blinked. Then he swallowed hard, as if something heavy had landed on his chest. This isn't going to work, he said quietly. Amelia's fingers tightened around the handle of her trunk. Excuse me? He shifted his eyes away. You didn't mention that you were... His voice trailed off. She stared at him. That I was what? That you were... black, he finally whispered, barely able to say it. Her heart sank. Not because it surprised her, but because she had hoped, just this once, that something would be different. 3 weeks of exhausting travel. 6 months of letters, kind letters. A man who called her dear and spoke of loneliness, of dreams, of building a new life with someone who understood him. He said he wanted a partner. Someone educated, someone kind. She gave him all of that. But he hadn't expected her skin. In your letters, he stammered, you wrote so eloquently. I just imagined. She lifted her chin. You imagined someone white. He said nothing. Tell me, she continued, voice calm but full of pain. Should I have warned you? That my skin is dark but my feelings are real? That my hands are the same hands that wrote every word you praised? People were watching. The station wasn't crowded, but there were enough folks nearby to catch every word. A white man standing in front of a well-dressed black woman who looked far too refined for the dusty ground beneath her feet. Eyes flickered. Murmurs began. Henry... Parker, a merchant of Riverdale, looked around nervously. It's not just me, he said, stepping back. It's the community. My business. People won't understand. She felt the tears burning behind her eyes, but she didn't let them fall. I spent everything I had to get here, she said softly. I don't have a place to return to. Henry reached into his pocket and pulled out some crumpled bills. Here, he said quickly. This should cover lodging for a few days. I'm sorry, truly, but this isn't going to work. That's when a new voice cut through the airlow, steady and sharp like a blade. Is that how you fix things, Parker? Hand out money and hope they disappear? They both turned. A tall man stepped forward from the far end of the platform. He wore clean but simple clothes, with quiet confidence in his posture. His face was weathered by sun and time, but his eyes sharp, light-colored, were locked on Henry. This is none of your concern, Henry muttered. It becomes my concern, the man said. When I see a man I've known for years act like a coward. He turned to Amelia and his gaze softened. Miss, he said gently, my name is Adrien Morrison. I own a property just outside town. If you'll allow it, I have guest quarters you may use while you decide your next steps. Number... strings, just shelter and dignity. Amelia hesitated. After all she had seen and lived through, kindness from strangers often came with a price. But there was something different in this man's tone. Not pity, not flirtation. Just quiet decency. Henry looked alarmed. Adrien, you can't be serious. What will people say? Adrien gave him a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. The same people who depend on my land, my business. I'm very interested to hear what they'll say. Henry opened his mouth, but then closed it. Everyone in Riverdale knew the truth. Adrien Morrison wasn't just a farmer. He was Riverdale. He owned half the land surrounding the town. Amelia nodded once. I accept your offer. Thank you. She picked up her trunk and walked toward Adrien, her steps slow but steady. Henry watched her go, his face pale. He didn't know it yet. But this moment, this quiet rejection based on nothing but skin, would be the beginning of something far bigger than any of them could imagine. Because hidden, deep inside Amelia's trunk, beneath her clothing and books, was something more powerful than pride or pain. A truth, a legacy. And once it came to light, Riverdale would never be the same again. The wheels of the carriage turned slowly as it moved down a narrow dirt road, leaving the station and Henry Parker behind. Amelia sat quietly beside Adrien Morrison, her trunk. By her feet, her gloved hands resting in her lap. Outside the window, the field stretched wide and open, the sun beginning to dip low behind the trees. Neither of them spoke for the first few minutes. Adrien seemed to understand she needed space. But eventually, he looked at her gently. "If you'd rather be taken to town, to a boarding house, I understand," he said. "I only offered because it didn't feel right watching that happen." Amelia shook her head. "Thank you, but I'll come with you. I'd prefer silence under a roof than stairs in a hotel." Adrien gave a quiet nod. "Fair enough." The road curved sharply, and suddenly, there it was. Amelia's eyes widened. The Morrison estate was no small farmhouse like she had imagined. It was a large Victorian-style mansion, its white walls glowing in the golden light, surrounded by acres of green fields, thick trees, and pastures where horses grazed peacefully. A wrought iron gate opened slowly as the carriage passed through, revealing a garden full of blooming roses and trimmed hedges. "This is ... all yours?" she asked softly. He smiled without pride. "I work the land, yes. It's been in my family for generations, though I've done a bit to restore it. We don't get many guests." As they reached the front porch, a kind-looking woman in apron stood waiting. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and her hands were folded with the quiet confidence of someone who had seen everything and judged nothing. "Miss Watson," Adrien said, helping Amelia down from the carriage. "This is Mrs. Fletcher. She manages the house. Mrs. Fletcher, our guest will be staying in the blue room." The woman gave a small bow. "It's already prepared, sir." Amelia followed her inside, through high-ceilinged hallways lined with paintings and the soft scent of polished wood and lemon oil. Every room seemed to hold stories, memories. "The blue room is just here," Mrs. Fletcher said, opening a tall door. Inside was a cozy chamber with soft blue wallpaper, lace curtains, and a bed covered in handmade quilts. A window overlooked the garden, and on the desk sat a glass vase with fresh flowers. "If you need anything," Mrs. Fletcher said kindly, "you ring this bell." Amelia looked around in silence, then gave the woman a polite nod. "Thank you." Left alone, she opened her trunk, removed her coat, and sat on the bed. For the first time in days, she exhaled. But her peace didn't last long. She reached into the false bottom of her trunk and pulled out a worn envelope tied in string. Inside were yellowing documents, maps, deeds, handwritten letters. Her grandfather's legacy. She had carried it all the way from Boston, hidden and protected. She looked at one of the pages. "Jacob Freeman," it read. Her great-grandfather. A freeman after the Civil War, he had once owned land in this very region, land that had mysteriously disappeared from her family's name. She put the documents away and sat quietly as the sun dipped below the hills. Later that evening, Adrien knocked on her door. "Dinner's ready," he said gently. She hesitated. "I don't want to cause more gossip." "You're already here," he replied. "They're going to talk anyway. Might as well eat." Downstairs, the dining room was long and warm. Candlelight danced off silverware, and the food smelled like comfort roasted chicken, bread, vegetables from the garden. Adrien served the plates himself. "I had a mother who believed in feeding the soul," he said, "and that starts with food." They ate quietly at first, then he spoke. "You didn't come here just to marry Henry Parker, did you?" Amelia paused, then met his gaze. "No, I came for something more. But I didn't expect to be humiliated before I even set my suitcase down." Adrien nodded slowly. "The truth is, this town still clings to ideas it should have buried long ago. People like Henry, they care too much about appearances and not enough about what's right. Amelia folded her hands. And what about you? I stopped caring what others thought a long time ago, he said. It's the only way to live freely. There was a pause. I used to be a teacher, she finally said. Taught girls of color in Boston, literature, history. But the school closed. I was left with very little. Then my grandfather passed, and in his will, he left me something. Something I don't fully understand yet. But I think it belongs here. Adrien didn't ask what it was. He simply nodded. If you ever want help, I have a library. It's a mess, but full of old documents. You're welcome to it. She gave a small smile for the first time all day. Thank you. He stood. Rest. Tonight, tomorrow. You can decide whatever your next chapter will be. No one here decides that but you. As he left the room, Amelia sat back and looked around once more. The mansion, the quiet, the space, it wasn't just shelter. It was something else. Something that gave her time to breathe, time to think, and time to remember. That rejection was not the end. It was the beginning of something deeper. Because she hadn't come to Riverdale just to escape her past. She had come to reveal a truth that could no longer stay buried. In the days that followed, Amelia settled into a rhythm she hadn't known in years. She rose early, walked the garden paths behind the mansion, and watched the horses graze past the mist-covered fields. But her peace was not idle. Beneath her calm expression, she was studying, searching quietly, digging for the pieces of a story no one in Riverdale wanted to remember. Each morning, she spent hours in Adrien's grand library. The room was large and old, with sunlight slanting across dusty shelves stacked with thick ledgers, property maps, journals, and boxes of fading town records. Most were disorganized, unlabeled, untouched for years. Adrien had warned her, my father collected everything. My grandfather too. But no one ever made sense of it. That challenge was exactly what she needed. She tied back her hair, set aside her coat, and dove in like a detective. Her mind trained from years of teaching. History moved with quiet discipline. She cross-referenced names, dates, land titles. She drew lines between maps and family trees. And slowly, a pattern began to appear. A name that kept showing up in the oldest documents, only to disappear in the newer ones. Freeman, Jacob Freeman. Her great-grandfather, the land that once bore. His nameland officially granted to him after the war was now listed under names like Parker, Linton, and Hargrave. Some papers looked like transfers. Others were outright erasures. She felt her chest tighten. He didn't lose the land. It was taken. And now, more than a century later, his descendant had returned to the very soil that once belonged to him, welcomed by one man, feared by the rest. Meanwhile, outside the Morrison estate, Riverdale buzzed with whispers. A woman like her staying at a place like that? Unmarried, uninvited, unwelcome. Wives leaned in close at the town bakery, muttering between rolls of dough. I heard she was a mail-order bride, but he sent her back. She's still here, someone else replied, living with Morrison. That can't be proper. At the hardware store, a man lowered his voice behind the counter. They say she walks the estate like she owns it. Well, maybe she's looking for someone to buy it for her, came the dry reply. Adrien, for his part, ignored the gossip entirely. He went about his business like always calm, direct, and focused. But he watched the shift happen. Customers hesitated before placing orders. Town officials spoke to him with nervous politeness. Neighbors who once waved from their wagons now avoided eye contact. You're causing a stir without even trying, he said to Amelia one morning over tea on the back veranda. She looked up from a stack of papers. I've been a stir all my life. This is nothing new. He chuckled. Still, I admire the way you walk through it. She tilted her head. With quiet shoes and open eyes? With grace, he said simply. Amelia smiled, but it was brief. They don't fear me. They fear what I might represent. What do you represent? She didn't answer. Not yet. Later that week, something unexpected happened. Henry Parker came to visit. He arrived at the mansion gates in his usual stiff black coat, holding his hat tightly in his hands. His face was tight with forced concern. He asked for Adrien. Said he wanted to speak. Adrien allowed him in but made no effort to be warmed out in the parlor. Henry paced slowly, eyes flickering from the paintings on the wall to Amelia standing calmly in the doorway. I just came to check on her, he said. Make sure she's adjusting. I'm right here, Mr. Parker, Amelia said plainly. He gave her a weak smile. Of course. I just wanted to apologize again, and to say the church committee is, well, they're concerned. It's not proper for you to be staying here, especially. Especially what? Adrien asked, voice cold. Henry cleared his throat. Well, especially when she's unmarried and black? Adrien said. Henry froze. Adrien stepped closer. Go on, say it. But Henry didn't. Instead, he looked at Amelia and said, We're organizing a fund. Enough for a train ticket back to Boston. We thought it might be best for everyone. Amelia looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not warmly, but with the kind of poise that burns quietly through the air. That's kind of you. She said, But I won't be going anywhere. Henry looked confused. You have no job, no family here. I have both now, she replied calmly. Mr. Morrison has offered me a position organizing his library. It's quite a large one. Plenty of work. Adrien folded his arms. She's been brilliant. My family left that place a mess. She's turning it into something valuable. Henry paled. He opened his mouth, then closed it. His eyes darted back to Amelia's briefcase sitting by the fireplace. The corner of an old map peeked out from under the leather flap. He didn't know what was in there, but something in his gut told him, whatever Amelia Watson was doing at the Morrison estate, it wasn't just organizing books. As he backed away, making awkward excuses and heading for the door, Adrien walked him out. Then turned to Amelia with a serious look. He's going to be trouble. Amelia nodded. Let him. While he spreads stories in town, I'll be piecing together truths he spent his life trying to bury. Adrien stared at her. Not with fear, not with worry, but with something like awe. He knew then that the woman standing before him wasn't here just by accident. She was here for a reason, and Riverdale was about to feel it. The morning after Henry's visit, Amelia rose earlier than usual. The house was still asleep. The halls were quiet. A breeze from the open window rustled the lace curtains in the blue room as she washed her face, tied back her hair, and stepped barefoot onto the cool floor. She opened her trunk, not for clothes this time, but for answers. One by one, she laid out her great-grandfather's papers across the bed. Deeds, maps, land surveys, letters with cracked ink and formal signatures. In Boston, these documents were family heirlooms. Here in Riverdale, they were something more. They were history. They were truth. And for people like Henry Parker, they were danger. Down in the library, she worked in silence, surrounded by dust, old leather, and stories half forgotten. She cataloged boxes, sorted by year, cross-referenced Adrien's records with her grandfather's. Then she found it, a meeting of the Riverdale Property Committee. Names she now knew too well. Parker, Lennon, Hargrave, the same names on current deeds, bank signs, and town buildings. But back then, they had no legal right to the lands they held now. She sat back in her chair, stunned. The meeting's notes were vague, handwritten by someone in a rush. But one thing was clear after Jacob Freeman was forced to flee town under threat. The committee simply divided his land among themselves. No sale. No signature. No justice. A voice broke the silence. Found something? She turned. Adrien stood in the doorway, a mug of tea in one hand, watching her with curious eyes. Amelia nodded slowly, enough to explain why Henry looked so nervous yesterday. He set the mug beside her and leaned over the table. She showed him the documents, her voice calm but firm. They didn't just forget about Jacob Freeman, she said. They erased him. Adrien studied the old signatures. This was never meant to be seen again. No, she said. It wasn't. He looked at her. What are you planning? I don't know yet, she answered honestly. But I didn't come here for a husband. I came because I was left with more than grief. I was left with responsibility, and I can't walk away from it. Adrien didn't try to guide her. He just nodded. If you need anything legal help, contacts, I'll make calls. She looked at him closely. Why are you helping me? He thought for a moment, then said, because I built my life on land my ancestors bought legally. And it matters to me that others do the same, especially when someone tried to bury the truth to protect their pride. Amelia closed the folder. Then let's be careful. I don't want war, I want facts. I want what's fair. The next few days passed like quiet preparation before a stormed out word had already spread that Amelia wasn't leaving. That she was working for Adrien. That she walked through the estate with confidence now, not hesitation. On Sunday, during market hours, Adrien and Amelia rode together into town. People noticed. Wives paused mid-step. Men stared from behind crates. Even children, sensing the unspoken rules, glanced at their parents, unsure how to act out at the general store. Adrien ordered supplies while Amelia stood beside him, reading quietly from a small notebook. Henry Parker stood just 2 stores down, pretending to study tobacco tins. He watched them through the window. His lips pressed together tightly. Brazen, he muttered to the clerk behind him. Walking into town like she owns it, the clerk didn't respond. Henry's voice lowered. She's staying at Morson's house. What decent woman would do that? We should have never allowed it. Someone behind him cleared his throat. Henry turned. It was Reverend Mills, a quiet man in his 70s with white hair and heavy eyes. He didn't say a word, he just stared at Henry, not angrily. Just tired. Henry muttered an excuse and walked out quickly. That afternoon, back at the estate, Amelia sat on the veranda going over property law. Adrien joined her with a stack of letters from his father's archives. As they worked, a rider approached the gate. It was Henry. Again. This time. No hat, no flowers, no excuses. He marched up the steps with a strained smile. I've come to speak with Miss Watson, he said stiffly. Adrie, and nodded toward her. She's right here. Henry turned. Miss Watson. I'd like to offer ... peace. There's no need for hostility. Whatever troubles come between us, I believe it's best resolved quietly. Amelia stood. There is no hostility, she said, voice steady. There's only truth. And I think we both know what I'm starting to uncover. Henry's jaw tightened. I don't know what you mean. Then perhaps you should come by the library, she said. I'll show you what your grandfather signed in 1872. He blanched. You have no idea what you're getting involved in? No, she said. I know exactly what I'm involved in. A lie that's lasted too long. Henry took a step forward. If you go public with this, you'll destroy Riverdale's peace. These families ... they built this town. And they built it on land they didn't own, she said sharply. Adrie, and stepped in. That's enough, Parker. Henry looked at them both, face twisted in something between fear and anger. You think you can just rewrite history? No, Amelia said softly. I'm not rewriting anything. I'm finally reading it out loud. As Henry stormed off, Adrien turned to her. That was a line he won't forget. She nodded. Good, because neither will I. Later that evening, Adrien watched Amelia working by lamplight, her hands moving steadily over paper, her face calm and determined. She wasn't just studying history anymore. She was preparing to make it. The letter went out on a Thursday morning, typed carefully on cream paper, signed in ink with steady hands. It was addressed not just to the town mayor, but to the historical society. The city council and the regional press. Adrien had watched Amelia fold it, seal it, and slide it into an envelope with quiet certainty. You sure? He had asked. She looked up from the writing desk. calm but tired. If I wait for the perfect moment, I'll be waiting forever. The truth doesn't need perfection. It just needs to be told. That afternoon, the Morrison estate became a quiet headquarters. Phone calls began coming in, requests for meetings, reporters asking questions. A state-certified lawyer from 2 towns over, someone Adrienne trusted, arrived to review Amelia's documents. Together, they checked every record, every name, every date. There were no holes. The evidence was strong enough to demand a public hearing. Riverdale buzzed with nervous energy. Henry Parker heard the news by the end of the day. He burst into the mayor's office without knocking, his voice already raised. "She's trying to destroy us. That woman, she's digging through land records like she owns the place." The mayor, a short man with a nervous blank, raised both hands. "We received her letter. She's not threatening anything yet. But if what she's claiming is true, we need to look into it." Henry slammed a folder onto the desk. "It's a trick. It's revenge. She got rejected, and now she wants to ruin Riverdale." The mayor didn't respond because he had read the documents himself that morning. He had seen Jacob Freeman's name, the original deed from 1866, and the land transfer notes, or lack of them, dated 6 years later. There was something sickening in it all. Something shameful. He said quietly, "A town built on stolen land cannot pretend to be proud. It can only decide whether to hide it or fix it." Henry left fuming. That night, Adrienne found Amelia on the back porch, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea. She stared out at the garden, silent. "You okay?" He asked. She nodded slowly. "It's strange. For years, I imagined finding this proof, speaking the truth. Now that it's happening, it doesn't feel like victory. It feels like standing on the edge of something deep. Truth is heavy," he said. "Especially when you carry it alone." She looked at him. "I'm not alone anymore." The public hearing was scheduled for the following week. It would be held in the town hall, a square, wooden building with creaking steps and tall windows, usually reserved for festivals and town fairs. But now it would host something much older than celebration. It would host a reckoning. When the day came, the benches filled fast. Farmers, store owners, teachers, old men who remembered Jacob Freeman's name from whispers their fathers had spoken in guilt. Women who carried their grandmother's stories. Young people who had never heard of the Freeman family at all. At the front of the room sat a panel. The mayor, the town lawyer, and Judge Thompson, retired but respected. Henry Parker sat near, the front jaw clenched, sweat beading on his forehead. Then the doors opened. Adrienne stepped inside first, tall and calm, and behind him walked Amelia, dressed not to impress, but to speak. A soft gray dress, her shoulders straight, her steps steady. She carried only a briefcase. The room went quiet. No one had to introduce her. She stood at the front, opened her case, and began. "My name is Amelia Watson. I am a teacher, a granddaughter, and a legal representative of the estate of Jacob Freeman. Was granted land in this region in 1866 after the war." She laid out the documents in rows. Original deeds, governor-signed maps, family records, a sworn affidavit from her grandfather, and notarized proof of inheritance. Every paper spoke louder than any voice. She paused, then said, "This town forgot my great-grandfather." But it didn't lose him. It erased him. Gasps, murmurs. A few heads bowed in shame. Henry leapt to his feet. "She's lying. These records are fake." The judge raised a hand. "Mr. Parker." Sit down. Henry dropped into the chair, red-faced. Amelia continued, her voice still calm. "I'm not here to punish. I'm not here to take homes or burn businesses. I'm here to correct the record and to ask this town to do what's right." The room was silent. Then Adrienne stepped forward. He held up a proposal, a community land trust, funded partly by returned revenues from the properties that were once Freeman land. Money that would build affordable housing, scholarships, a public library. "We don't need revenge. he said. "We need restoration." Henry stood again, voice trembling. You're going to ruin us." Amelia looked him in the eye. "No," she said. "I'm going to fix what you tried to pretend never happened." The judge looked over the documents. The mayor read the proposed resolution aloud. The crowd sat motionless, but listening. Then Judge Thompson spoke. "These records are authentic." Verified, there is no legal path to undo history. But there is a moral one. He looked at Amelia. "You've taken that path." Henry slumped in his chair. The vote was called by a narrow margin. But enough. The Freeman Foundation was approved. As the town council adjourned, Amelia stood still. She wasn't smiling. Not yet, because this was just the beginning, for the first time in Riverdale's history. The town library was filled with stories that had once been silenced. It stood in the building that used to be Henry Parker's general store. The sign was still there above the door, faded and cracked, but now, underneath, a new brass plaque read, "The Freeman Public Library, dedicated to truth, knowledge, and justice." Inside, rows of polished shelves stood proudly where once sacks of flour and canned goods were stacked. Sunlight poured in through wide windows. Children sat on colorful rugs, reading books that spoke of courage, freedom, and history. Their history. Amelia walked quietly through the aisles, a clipboard in one hand, her eyes scanning titles and notes. It had only been 2 months since the town council had approved the Freeman Foundation. But already the change was beginning to show, subtle, slow, but undeniable. The first scholarship had been awarded to a boy named Joshua, whose family had never imagined college could be within reach. The local school was being renovated using funds from the trust. For the first time, a group of townspeople were working side by side, black, white, old, young, to design a community garden that would feed every family, regardless of status. And Amelia? She had become the quiet heartbeat of it all. She didn't give speeches. She didn't seek praise. She just showed up early, steady, reliable. Some days she worked with town officials, reviewing records. Other days, she spent hours in the Morrison Estate's Grand Library, preserving the newly recovered documents in acid-free folders, labeling every detail for future generations. But not everyone accepted the change with grace. Some residents still whispered behind closed doors. Some chose to walk down a different street just to avoid passing the library doors. And Henry Parker? He was gone, sold his properties, left town quietly. The man who once controlled so much of Riverdale now worked as a clerk in a nearby city, his pride bruised. His name faded from town discussions like dust swept off a porch. A Dr. Ian Morrison watched it all from a distance, never boasting, never stepping into the spotlight. But every time Amelia passed him in the hallway or met him on the garden path, he offered a nod, a soft smile, a gesture that said, "You did what none of us could." One chilly evening, as autumn painted the trees gold and red, Adrien found Amelia sitting on the steps of the estate porch, her legs wrapped in a wool blanket, sipping tea. He sat beside her, wordless for a moment. Then he said, "You could have taken everything." She looked at him. "I know. You had the legal right. Parker's land, the others too. You could have torn it all down." Amelia sipped her tea. "And I would have become them." Adrien tilted his head. "You'd have been justified." She shook her head. "Justice isn't always about winning. Sometimes it's about building something better than the people before you ever imagined." He leaned back, exhaling slowly. "The town's different now. They don't all say it, but I see it in their eyes. They're not sure what to do with me," she said softly. "You're not what they expected. You're better." She glanced at him. "They thought I came here to marry a merchant. And instead," he said with a small grin, "you built a legacy." She looked out at the horizon, the field stretching far and wide under the setting. "Son, I didn't build it alone," she whispered. "Your name helped open the door, but it had to be more than that. It had to be worth stepping through." Adrien grew quiet. Then gently, he reached into his coat pocket and handed her a folded piece of paper. She unfolded it carefully. It was a land survey. Neatly drawn lines, signatures, fresh ink. "I've been thinking," he said. "The Freeman Foundation needs a permanent home, not just a library. A place where young minds can grow, where families can gather, a cultural center, right here on the estate. Not just named after your grandfather, but after you, too." She stared at the paper. "A dream." "I've already started setting aside the land," he said, "but I won't do it without you." The moment was quiet. Gentle Dot, then Amelia smiled, not politely, not briefly, but fully, deeply. A smile of someone who had been broken, who had been burned, but who had also been believed in. "You know," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "the night Henry rejected me, I thought it was the worst moment of my life." Adrian's eyes met hers, and now I see it for what it really was, she said. A door closing so a better one could open. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of wood smoke and fresh leaves. They sat in silence as the sun disappeared beyond the hills, and the stars began to peek out one by one like reminders that even darkness holds beauty. And inside the house, where history had once been hidden away, a lamp flickered in the library window, a signal that truth was no longer afraid to shine. 6 months later, Riverdale no longer looked like the place Amelia first arrived in. The train station where she'd once been left standing alone had been repainted and renamed. A small bronze plaque beside the platform now read, "In honor of those once turned away, may this town always welcome with open arms." It was simple, quiet, but every traveler who passed it slowed down to read. The Freeman Foundation's community center stood proudly at the edge of the Morrison Estate Modern, sunlit and alive with movement. Its glass walls reflected the surrounding trees, and inside, music, laughter, and lessons echoed off the walls. Young girls stood at whiteboards solving math problems. Mothers attended workshops on business and gardening. Elderly men swapped stories in the reading room while sipping sweet tea from paper cups. And at the very heart of it all was Amelia, not in a spotlight, not on a stage, but in the corners of classrooms, walking beside children in the garden, helping an old woman fill out a housing application. Her presence was calm, quiet, but unmistakably powerful, like roots beneath the earth that make everything grow. One fall afternoon, Adrienne found her standing in the old Freeman Library, now fully restored and connected by walkway to the new cultural center. She was holding a book of poetry, reading aloud to a small group of teenagers seated cross-legged on the rug. When the reading was done, the students scattered, some to the shelves, others to the cafe. He waited until they were gone, then stepped forward. "You always did like the quiet work," he said gently. She closed the book and smiled. "The loudest change happens in the quietest rooms." He held up a letter in his hand, official looking, with a seal. "They've invited you to speak at the university. Not just about the land case, but about the foundation. About your method, your process. It's national news now." She blinked. "I didn't ask for that." "I know," he said, "but it's yours. You made history here." She looked down for a moment, then said, "I didn't come here to change history. I came because I had nowhere else to go." He walked closer. "And now you have a town." She gave a soft laugh. "Do I?" Adrienne nodded. "You do. They may not all say it. Some may never find the words, but they know. Riverdale is better because of you. You didn't just uncover injustice, you showed us how to fix it without hatred." She set the book down and leaned against the edge of the desk. "You remember what I said on that first night?" She asked him. "You said you had no place to return to." She nodded. "But now I think I've built one." He hesitated, then took a slow breath. "There's one more thing," he said. "If you're still open to the idea." "I meant what I said when I first brought you here. I wasn't offering charity. I saw something in you that day. And not just strength or purpose. I saw a future." Amelia's heart beat a little faster. She met his eyes. "I'm not the woman you expected to arrive here," she said. "No," he whispered. You're so much more. Silence lingered. Then she reached for his hand, not for support, but as an equal. And that, more than any courtroom or council vote, marked the beginning of something new. A year later, in Riverdale's old town square, a modest statue was unveiled. Not a towering figure cast in glory, but a simple woman in a teaching dress. One hand resting on a book, the other reaching down to help a child to their feet. The plaque beneath it read, Amelia Watson Freeman, educator, healer, builder of tomorrow. She never asked for it. In fact, she tried to refuse, but the town insisted, not because she saved them, but because she reminded them who they could be when they chose justice over silence. That evening, back at the estate now named Freeman Morrison House, Amelia sat. On the wide porch with the Edrine beside her, children played in the distance. Music from the town square floated on the breeze. She took a sip of tea and said, "Funny how it all started. That train station, that rejection. I thought my life had ended. And now?" She looked around. "Now I understand. Some rejections are endings, they're reroutes." Adrene nodded. "What happened to Henry Parker was justice." "No," she said softly. "What happened to Riverdale, that was justice." He smiled. "And what happened to us?" She turned to him, eyes full of peace. "That was fate." They sat together as the stars emerged, one by one, above them. The sky held no judgment, only light, and below, on the land once stolen, now restored, a new chapter had begun, not just for Amelia, not just for Riverdale, but for every soul. Who ever believed they were too different to belong? This time, the doors would not close. This time, love and truth had the last word.